Hello friends, let's talk today about the situation in Ukraine and around Ukraine, nowadays situation. Of course, we'll talk about the Ukrainian counteroffensive, situation around the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant and more things. Last Thursday and last Friday, Ukraine celebrated the Knowledge Day in our country. And it's extremely important Knowledge Day this year because each fifth pupil in Ukraine are studying out of Ukraine, are studying out of educational system of Ukraine. For nowadays, 3,800,000 of pupils are studying in Ukraine, near 800,000 pupils studying abroad of Ukraine. Almost all of them are in Europe countries, European countries, and near 200,000 of pupils are studying in Russia and Russia-controlled territories. Each fifth pupil of Ukraine are studying out of system, and it's a great problem which should be extremely difficult to compensate in nearest future. Coming back to the situation in Ukrainian counteroffensive in the south of Ukraine, with the aim of dissecting and defeating the Russian group on the right bank of the river Dnieper. This counteroffensive is a long awaited for international public opinion and Western partners since it was announced back in May this year. Thus, Ukraine has few goals in this counteroffensive. The first goal is disrupt the so-called referendums in the occupied territories, preparation of which apparently are almost completed. Also is attempt to achieve military political success before the onset of the crisis autumn-winter period, when the parameters of military and financial support from the United States and allies and new round of negotiation and an energy crisis will be determined. But the start of the previous announced counteroffensive is also extremely necessary from a political point of view. It may also be just a beginning of operation to determine Russian military resources in the region. Of course, we are talking not if we are talking correctly and very closely to the land, we should say that the main fighting went in the direction of the city of Berislav, Novaya Kakhovka, Kherson, Nikolaev, Kryvyi Rog. In certain direction, the advance of Ukrainian troops by 5 till 15 kilometers is confirmed, and area of the village of Andreevka, Sukhoy Stavok, Pravdino, Kostroma, Vesokopilya and other are captured by Ukrainian forces. Both sides bear significant losses in people and equipment, very heavy fights. Rockets and artillery strikes were intensified to the maximum. Active hostiles and continue also in Donbass. Of course, we should understand that talking about Ukrainian counteroffensive in the south of Ukraine, we are not talking only about counteroffensive. We are talking about the Ukrainian attempt to change the whole logic of this war. First 6 months of this war, Russian troops were tried to advance new Ukrainian lands, new Ukrainian territories, and they have a main initiative in this war. it was very difficult time for Ukrainian troops because all the lands, very long lands of Ukrainian borders and Ukrainian flood lines, we should to defend near 1,500 kilometers of such battle front line, from which 800 kilometers are extremely heavy clashes. And Russia had the initiative in this war. Russia had the possibility to combine their troops in certain planes and make a battle for Ukraine and make a strike on Ukraine. But nowadays Ukraine is trying to come over this logic, and Ukraine try to push Russia to defense, and Ukraine try to recapture the initiative in this war. Of course, the possible failure of the counteroffensive may lead to the additional political and economical problems for Ukraine. A drop in the level of public support for political authorities and dissatisfaction among the militaries. The success of Ukrainian counteroffensive could derail Russians' plans to annex the Azov region, near Zaporozhye region, Azov Coast region, as well as a cause of crisis between Russian authorities and radical groups demanding decisive action against Ukraine, mobilizations, strikes at decision-making centers, and to use of tactical nuclear weapon if necessary. And from this side is very interesting the situation around the head of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, who will be pushed over in Ukraine. It looks like she is going to be pushed over in Russian authorities and should be recognized as the head of Russian internal troops, Rosgvardia. Vladimir Putin he tries to collect all the radicals, all the radical people around him to continue this war from the one side, and from the other side he's trying to take these people close to him because of the dangers of unsatisfaction. These people like Kadyrov or still call should lead a new anti-Putin movement, right-wing, absolutely radical but anti-Putin movement. The situation in Zaporozhye nuclear power plant remains difficult. The International Atomic Energy Agency mission visited the situation already in September 1 and is preparing its conclusions. The visit of IAEA was accompanied by a military escalation around the station and the city of Energodar, intensification of shelling and allegedly an attempt to land Ukrainian troops, evidence of which the Russian Federation has not yet provided. The International Atomic Energy Agency has left some of its experts, 2 persons as I know, at the station from constant monitoring. In fact, launched a mission of constant monitoring of the situation around this station. The course of the International Atomic Energy Agency's visit to the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant is already being actively criticized in Ukraine in terms of refusing to bring Ukrainian journalists with them, meeting with Russian journalists, and following the Russian logic of visiting this plant. It's quite possible that this criticism is already an element of the struggle for the content of IAEA report which unfold behind the scenes between the Ukraine and Russian Federation. Ukraine is striving to prevent the so-called referendum. In particular, the Ukrainian Special Service continue to effectively terrorize representatives of the occupying authorities and have already made a number of successful attempts on them. It is reported about the death in the Kherson region, so-called deputy chairman of agriculture, former People's Deputy of Ukraine from the presidential party, Servant of People, Andrei Kovalyov. With the increase in assistance to Ukraine, the United States also intends to strengthen control over this transfer of weapons, which in turn should bring down internal criticism as well the response of the Joe Biden administration to opposition demands to strengthen control over the supply of weapons. This control will be strengthened with the advent of a single watch general who will close the entire supply of the armed forces of Ukraine. The choice of a commander responsible for coordinating efforts indicates the Pentagon's intention to create a permanent assistance team for Ukraine. That is a transition from predominantly one-time projects to train and help Ukrainians to a long-term strategy that can last for more than 1 year. Accordingly, preparation and underway for a protracted war. By the end of the first month of the grain corridor, only about 1 million tons were brought by sea. Taking into account the fact that hostilities continue, it will be difficult to increase the throughput capacity by 3 times, up to 3 million tons by month, for the export of the planned 20 million tons of products. As a new crop arrives in Ukraine, the problem of storing agricultural products arises. Science granaries are still filled with millions of tons of products from previous years. So it's also a very interesting situation around the Ukrainian budget. Our funding from the budget, from our state budget, from our own revenues and resources for August 2022 amounted to tax and customs 93 billion Ukrainian hryvnias, including refund from 7 till 8 billion hryvnias, war bonds near 11 billion hryvnias, financing of the National Bank of Ukraine near 30 billion hryvnias. In turns out, without external assistance, with internal resources, all amount internal resources due the August data, approximately 134 billion hryvnia. Aggregate receipts, income, government bonds, foreign aid, and National Bank of Ukraine for August near 306 billion hryvnia. And at the same time, the expenses are near 253 billion hryvnias. How has our budget been financed since the beginning of the war, from February 24 till August 31? Again, the change of the leader between the money of international partners and taxpayers. First place of financing grants and loans from external partners, near 544 billion hryvnias. The second place is taxes, customs, state-owned enterprises, which together gave about 518 billion hryvnias. National Bank of Ukraine 285 billion hryvnias and 19 billion hryvnias straight profit of the National Bank of Ukraine. So it common National Bank of Ukraine gave to Ukrainian budget near 304 billion hryvnias. Purchase of military government bonds by banks, legal entities and citizens also bring to Ukraine 144 billion hryvnias. As we see, the great dependence of the international support for Ukraine is still going on. The international support, grants, loans and so on is the main straight of the Ukrainian budget fulfillment. Also, we have very interesting results of the sociological researches made in Russia. Levada Center, half an opposite sociology company in Russia, in August asked Russians about very interesting questions. Do you follow the situation of Ukraine? Levada Center asked Russians, and 51% said yes. In March it was 64%. Now we have 13% less Russians who are leading, following the situation in Ukraine. Does the current situation bother you? 74% of Russians said yes. In April it was 82%. Do you support Russian armed forces in their doings in Ukraine? 76% said yes. In March it was 80%. The prevailing feelings about the military action in Ukraine are pride for Russia, 48%, and anxiety, fear, horror, 31%. These sentiments have hardly changed since March. On the question of whether it is necessary to continue hostilities or start negotiations, society is divided almost equally. About half of the respondents, 48%, believe that it is necessary to continue hostilities. Slightly less, 44%, think that peace negotiations should be started. The first position prevails among the older age group, 40-54 years old. It's 53%, and 55 years and older, 55%. In the 18-24 and 25-38 age group, the situation is reserved. The position on the need to start peace negotiation enjoys the greatest support. And one of the third of the respondents believe that the people like themselves are morally responsible for the death of civilians and destruction in Ukraine. 10% believe that they certainly do. 24% to some extent. The opposite position is held by 60% of the respondents. Since May, there have been no significant change on this issue. As we see, there are a high level of moral response in Russian society on the Ukrainian crisis, but at the same time the bigger part of Russian society is ready and support the continuation of war, but not against any peace agreements of peace negotiation. Thank you, friends, for watching this video. Please write down your question. I'll try to answer for all your clever questions, and I'll try to continue this vlog as best as I can. Thank you, friends. Bye bye. Have a nice day.